Hello, funky people. Welcome to another episode of the Funky Marketing Show, where I host some beautiful people that do things differently with a little bit of funk. And today I have a pleasure of hosting somebody that I've been going back and forth in the comment, arranging this episode for a long time. She's a content strategy lead at Atlassian, somebody who has done a lot when it comes to content strategy, thought leadership, and even the presence on LinkedIn. So those are all the things that we're going to talk about with Ashley Faus. I'm pronouncing it right. She's going to tell me. But first, let's dance to our well-known funky marketing show intro. And we're back. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here. I love the retro vibes. Every time I see it come up, I'm just like, this is so exciting. All the graphics make me happy.
Yeah, it makes it hard because now everybody we're working with, they want to have the same vibe, sort of, and then it makes it harder for the guys working in like content videos and those kind of stuff to kind of like find something that vibes.
Yeah, well, and especially when, I mean, again, we can talk about this from like a content and thought leadership and personal branding standpoint. If you do something distinctive and then everybody wants it, and then you just get a bunch of copycats, it's like, okay, no, but I intentionally made this for myself or for my company. It doesn't work if you just pick it up and slap it onto your brand or your messaging. So it's kind of funny. I'm just laughing at the thought of all your clients asking for that retro look and feel. And you're like, no, but that's the reason we're funky marketing, because we have this retro, not whatever old school SaaS company trying to steal it from us. So it's kind of a funny, penalty for success almost.
Yeah, and it reminds me, there are some agencies that curse a lot, especially British guys. I mean, we from Serbia do it as well, but maybe not when we speak in English. But and then the clients are coming and look, we don't want to curse in our content, but that's us. It's not you.
Yeah.
That's different.
Well, we're an Australian company. Atlassian is Australian. So we actually have two curse words in our 5 core values. So I feel you on the cursing. I personally don't curse a ton, like publicly in business. And so anytime I say the values, I'm like, you can replace the words if you want, whatever makes you feel comfortable. So it's always funny. Yeah, the cursing thing is definitely a polarizing discussion.
Yeah, I think I read about it related to Australia somewhere, but I forgot about it. But here we say lots of stuff like so naturally that when we translate it to somebody coming, they're like, "What the fuck are you guys actually saying?" Like that
Yeah,
doesn't make
yeah,
any sense.
yeah. That's
But I
amazing.
guess that's the localism thing, and different dialects, different way of using words, and all those stuff.
Yeah.
But tell me, and tell the audience a little bit, a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm Ashley Faus. I am a marketer, writer, and speaker by day, and a singer, actor, and fitness fiend by night. So I intentionally try to combine those, personal and professional elements. That's something that's very important to me in how I create content, how I do thought leadership, how I work with my teams. So I'm currently working at Atlassian across Agile and DevOps teams. So I do a lot of marketing to developers, and that happens across a number of different types of assets, channels, different content depths. So it's a big role that touches a lot of different types of marketing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I think our last episode was with Željko Riha, who was talking about how to do marketing to developers when leads doesn't exist.
Yep.
And he talked about a lot, focusing on Reddit, focusing on Twitter, and a lots of events and those kind of stuff. And it's something that is totally different. I've done marketing to developers, and it's interesting because gotta do lots of stuff differently, and there are different types of developers. Even though people don't think about it,
Yeah.
they are all different people.
Yeah. Well, and I think about this from like a core practice. You have to love the whole human. It's not just the customers, it's not just the users, or it's not just this monolith of marketers or developers or, business people. It's like, no, 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 no.
Hmm.
Each of those have subsets within them. And it's not even just, oh, I'm a, growth marketer or content marketer, or I'm a back-end developer or front-end developer. It's like, who are they as whole humans? What do they care about? What do they love? What stuff do they nerd out about? And that's what you really have to dig into if you want to reach them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, I'm always fascinated how I hear new things about developers, because like one group was telling me like we like board games and we like people coming to our team to like board games. Otherwise, we they will be bored and we will dislike them. So because developers are pretty open in that. Then other
Yeah.
group says like we pretty much love humor and we
Yeah.
go really bad at it. So somebody coming in has to be somebody that likes humor in that way. Or in other case, it was, like guys didn't know how to write content for developers. And everything they wrote, the feedback was not good, not
Yeah.
related. Something is missing. And then finally, like how we solved it, we found a developer that likes to write,
Yep.
and I convinced the company to actually, give him the salary of a developer to write for developers,
Yep.
and it worked pretty well.
Yeah, that's the thing, having that deep subject matter expertise. I mean, even just the language is different, right? Like, I think about this a lot. We talk a lot about removing the jargon from our content, but
Hmm.
there's a certain amount of jargon that signals that you're like me. And so you see, and again, we see this as marketers. I can tell if you're like me, if you're one of my people, based on how you talk, based on the way that you're saying things. Developers are the same way. If you're not talking and using that in-group jargon, they immediately are like, you don't belong here. Who are you? What are you doing? And so, yeah, we've done the same thing where, having developers write for developers, or having marketers partner with developers to understand, is this resonating? How are you thinking about it? Is this language the right way to say it? Is this the right depth for this particular piece of content or this particular channel? That's been a huge help because, again, if you're not if you're not balancing that amount of jargon to signal that you understand the audience and you're part of that audience and you understand their challenges, then you just come across as regurgitating whatever the marketing message is or the
Yeah,
sales pitch, basically.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it reminds me of those old way of doing things like that. Andy Ruskin is going against, like starting from the problem, because like
Yep.
then basically you are going to the places where people don't want you to go. They don't want to
Right.
talk about the problems. They don't want
Right.
to admit that they have a problem, and it makes them uncomfortable in that way.
Yeah.
But if you can find a way to make it, enjoyable for them to talk about things, more comfortable, then it's a totally different story. But tell me, how are you using like those talents, singing, fitness, all of that in the way you work?
Sure. So it's so funny. It shows up in a lot of different ways. I think that knowing your audience, loving your audience, really getting into their heads is more natural for me because I do come from that, musical theater background. So I'm constantly
Hmm.
having to change characters every scene. I tend to perform in the ensemble. And so every scene, I've got a new costume, I've got a new way to walk, I've got a new motivation, I've got a new problem, I've got a new solution. And so I'm constantly having to step into those shoes and think about, who is this person in this moment? What do they care about? What are they trying to achieve? That's something that's directly transferable into my marketing work. Who is this person? Who are they in this moment? What are they trying to achieve? So that's one way. The fitness piece of it actually comes in. I love to use fitness as an example as one part of my framework around content depths. So a lot of people
Hmm.
really think about mapping their content into the awareness, consideration, and purchase, and then some sort of retention, cross sell, upsell, whatever you want to call it, particularly if you're in SaaS. And for whatever reason, it's like, oh, that just drops you back into the awareness phase. And I'm like, That's not
Yeah.
That's not what happens. So I like to map content into depths, conceptual, strategic, and tactical. And the example I give from a fitness perspective is, if you ask someone at a high level, what does it mean to be healthy and fit? They'll tell you that it's some combination of diet and exercise. But the details of that are going to differ if you're yoga world versus runner world versus muscle and fitness magazine. And so at that conceptual, strategic, and tactical level, how you solve that problem, depending on which type of fitness you're into, that's a great way for it to be an example. So I like to do that. I also bring in my hobbies in other ways. I just did a post recently about this concept of a mise in place in cooking. And it's basically this concept that you set everything out, your ingredients, your pots, your pans, your tools, you set it all out ahead of time so that as you start that cooking or baking process, everything is where it should be. Okay, well, if we think about that from a content strategy perspective, the strategy is the mise in place. It's having all of those tools like your audience research, like your persona development, like your value proposition, like your channel strategy, like your assets and editorial calendar. It's all laid out so that when you go to execute, you don't miss any steps. You're not having to hunt around. You're not leaving things randomly on the calendar to get spoiled. And so those are some of the ways that I bring in all of those different hobbies directly into my marketing practice.
Love it. I mean, while listening to you, I was thinking what did I did yesterday, and I did all the same things while preparing the lunch. So that's
Yep.
basically it. And it is, how it should be, because then you are missing a few steps, and it gets back to you at one point.
Yeah.
It can be 3 years sometimes, and but why I cannot move further because I didn't do that 3 years ago, or
Yep.
those kind of things. And like, for example, like thinking about things, and the companies I'm talking with these days, like not many of them have actually gone to the calls with their customers, especially if you're talking about service-based business with clients. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't ever call the clients. Like, I'm seeing companies like working with clients for a year and a half, and they didn't do it. And then I jumped into the call with them, and then they asked for feedback. And like the client said, "Well, everything is okay. That's why we are working still together. But like the report that you were sending for us the first month was great, and then you never send it again." And it was like, oh my,
I don't
but
How do you not talk to the customers or lay out, here's the milestones and here's the deliverables? That
yeah, I mean, they are delivering, but they are just talking over the email. They didn't actually
Yeah.
call them to get the feedback.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and that
and
verbatim feedback makes such a difference. Hearing it, seeing how
exactly.
they're reacting, like, are they saying like, "Yeah, I mean, everything's fine." It's like, okay, that is clearly not the face and the body language and the tone of someone who is fine. That's versus someone being like, "Everything is terrible." And you're like, "Is it though?" Because again,
Yeah.
the whole face and tone is not, you got to have that match.
Exactly, it matters a lot, and you can find out so
Yeah.
many. I mean, I started Funky Marketing because I talked with around 250, 60 people, and I saw the gap. And
Yeah.
that's it. Basically, that's it. I was in Serbia seeing what's going on in the world because basically I had 6,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I could chat with them every day,
Yep.
and ask them for insights and those kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
let's dive deeper into the strategy first, because I want to get your insights. Like, what are some things that you are doing that you are not seeing many people think or do in that way? Because lots of people talk about strategy, and I think people kind of know that it's not like a 40 pages piece that you create and you never use, but it's something different.
Yeah. I honestly think the biggest thing is the mindset shift. So I talk about this a lot in terms of the content playground. So instead of thinking of it through that linear journal, that funnel mindset, you have to shift your thinking into a playground mindset. And if you think about what it means to play on the playground, like, what's the right way to play on the playground? Is it to go slides, then swing, then merry-go-round? Is it to skip the merry-go-round altogether? And what about the people who are sitting on the park benches? Are they using it the wrong way? And so if we think about that from an audience perspective, we keep trying to force them into this journey that we want them to go on. And that's how a lot of strategy documents are written. Step one, they will use the Google to find us. Step 2, they shall land on the website, and there they will consider. We must sell them. Step 3, they will hit the form, which they will fill out in due process. And you're like, nobody wakes up every day and says, today I really want to fill out a form to download an ebook to get into a sales nurture. I just feel like that's what I want to do with myself. Nobody does that, right? We wake up and we have a problem, or we're working on some solutions, or we have a conversation and it inspires us. And then we're like, actually, fun fact, let me understand, like, when did that happen, right? And that's how we start our journeys. And so when we shift away from that funnel mindset into the playground mindset, that completely unlocks the way that we think about our strategy. We think about it in terms of holistic touch points. We think about it in terms of delight and engagement. We think about it in terms of an endless journey. So I don't win when I make a sale. And some of that is coming from a SaaS bias, right? As a SaaS marketer, I have to keep winning and re-winning the hearts, minds, and wallets of my audience. They could churn. They could stop paying us for our products. They could go find someone else. And so when I think about how does my content, from a thought leadership standpoint, from a social media standpoint, from an asset type standpoint, how does that play into the entire journey? When somebody clicks into the products, for example, when you go to Jira and it asks you, are you doing Scrum or Kanban? If you don't fundamentally understand Agile methodology, you're going to struggle with figuring out what you should choose when you get into the product. So I need to care what's happening in that onboarding journey. And the other team that owns that very first set of screens from a product standpoint, a UX standpoint, and a marketing standpoint needs to care about how I've educated them about Agile practices. They go back and forth. So that's one example of just that mindset shift where people think strategy is laying out, we're going to do X number of blog posts, we're going to do X number of videos, we're going to do a podcast versus a YouTube series. Those are all strategies and tactics, but your overall objectives and your mindset has to be that audience-focused understanding of practices-led learning content, product-led learning content. Is it buy intent? Is it use intent? That level is where you really start to see the differentiation between good quality holistic marketing and narrow-minded, tactics-focused marketing.
Yeah, I love the example, the way you describe it with Jira and the tool. Like, and also I remember like how old I am, because when I was using Jira, like in 2013, 15, there wasn't that choice over there,
Right. Right.
at the time. So it means that you also, when I think about the tool, you figure it out, like what are some things you need to ask right from the start, so you can give people personalized and better experience with the tool.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's interesting too, as we think about, templates, for example, and out of the box workflows. And there's a subset of our audience that loves the flexibility and customization. There's another subset that's like, just get me in there, show me how to do it. I just want to start working immediately. And so how you balance that experience to make sure that if somebody really wants to customize it and build it from scratch themselves, they have enough ability to do that. But if somebody is like, nope, just drop me in, tell me how to do it. We have a lot of people asking us, what's the best way to use our product? And so it's an interesting tactic, because I think we've almost swung too far on the other side of the pendulum with marketing about not selling, that we say, let me just educate. Let me just back all the way up and just do thought leadership. But at some point, people want to know, what are the freaking features of this product? What problems do they solve? What kind of teams use it? What are the use cases? How is somebody else doing this? Show me an actual example of a workflow. And so that's another big shift, again, from that funnel mindset where you say, I only handle awareness or top of funnel, and somebody else randomly handles customer success or pricing. And it's like, no. We got to think holistically about that. Just because a team owns that piece of it from an organizational and, get stuff done standpoint, the audience should not be experiencing that handoff. To them, it should just be one continuous holistic journey. They should not be seeing behind the curtain of which team owns which thing. We shouldn't be shipping our organization, and our audience shouldn't have to experience that pain that, I don't know, Matt, I don't know what's happening with that. That's that team. They shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah. Oh my, like that, those gaps and those silos are like, I'm seeing them in every business, even now in the smaller ones. And
Yeah.
like, you know, and it's so easy to solve, like just get them to communicate.
Yeah.
But you
Just
know,
talk to
for
each
some
other.
reason we are all struggling with those things. I mean, I'm not, but you know, I say we, like most of people do. But you know, for, I don't know, let's not get into that. Like there's so much things to talk about from that standpoint. So what I like over there is that you thought from the way you explain it. You thought from how are people coming to you, what are the reasons, and then when they come to you, actually, you give them. I like to say that's like the smart automatization in that
Right.
way, because it means that you see the way they are buying the tool or using the tool, and then you automate based on their journey, not based on
Right.
what you figure out in your head.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely going from that customer first mindset and understanding how are they using it? What does our audience see? Not, and it's funny too, because obviously working in Atlassian and using these tools, I have to recognize I'm highly biased because we use our tools one way, but our audience may be using them a different way, or
Yeah.
my education level versus their education level are completely different. And so I'm sure you see this too, right? Like you're, a marketing agency helping other marketers, and you're advanced in these topics. And so, remembering that, like, oh man, some of the people who come and work with you are several steps behind where you are from a mindset perspective or a practices perspective or a measurement perspective. So it's an interesting thing to make sure that you're you're not bringing your own experience and saying, well, I don't know, this is how I use it, therefore that must be what everyone else is doing. No, the way I use it or the way we do it on my team is not necessarily representative of how everyone else is doing it, because they're coming from a different context, they're coming from a different problem set, they're coming from a different working style than we are. And so understanding all those different variables is key to really making sure that we create that journey in a way that resonates with them, not just kind of resonates with us or makes it easy for us to ship.
Yeah, guys, now you go back and listen to this part again, because I think that this is the something that so many marketing departments from companies and C-level executives swear to, but then again, nothing goes out because
Right.
they think it's not perfect.
Right.
And especially when it comes to content, because like the audience is the one who decides what's good for them, what's not. It's not you, it's not your team, it's not even me.
Yeah.
Like no matter how experienced I am, I don't know the audience.
Right.
So they will decide. And
Yeah.
it's like that from the start. And it's
Yeah.
uh, and I think also, like, coming back to what differentiates us, like, I think your approach in the way you do things, also like having in mind like singings, ensembles, like fitness, all those other stuff. This is what differentiates you, the way you do things. And
Yeah.
every person in the world has something else, and
Yeah.
we need to think from that perspective.
Yeah. Agreed.
So tell me about the thought leadership. Like I saw your post, and I see that you are getting frustrated, as lots of people are, with people considering thought leadership all kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
just talking different things and repeating things and using other people's words over there, copying posts, using Twitter posts to LinkedIn, lots of different stuff, and then thought leadership becomes something that that we should get away from it.
Yeah.
But in fact, it should be our look at things and the way we do things differently, the way we see things differently, if we have that different angle. If don't, we're not talking about thought leadership, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been wrestling with this problem for the better part of the last decade, because everybody says, oh, we want to be thought leaders. We want to build thought leaders in the organization. We want to produce thought leadership content. But then when you actually dig in and say, okay, what does that mean? How do we measure it? How is it different than sales enablement content or pricing pages
Mhm.
or onboarding content, right? Like it's a different type of thing. And how is it different than just being a subject matter expert? Or how is it different than just being good at your job? Or how is it different than just being famous? There's a lot of famous people out there who are not adding any value to the world. They just shout really loud or they just say controversial things and people are like, yeah, pitchforks. So they go viral, right? So I came up with this 4-pillar framework. It's credibility, profile, prolific, and depth of ideas. And all of them have to work together. So if you think about famous people, they have big profiles, they have a lot of followers, but they don't really have a ton of credibility and they don't really have strong depth of ideas. They're not saying anything. If you're a subject
Mhm.
matter expert, you probably have high credibility. You've been in your industry for a long time, or you've got certain licenses or education, and you probably have strong depth of ideas where you're solving hard problems and you may be doing that in a novel way. But if you're not prolific, if you're not sharing about that, then you're not building that following. And so you don't have a strong profile. And so these things have to work together in tandem. And you got to build them as you go, right? Like having one post go viral and then you get a ton of followers, you're going to lose your credibility. And if you're not codifying your ideas and sharing smart things, then you're just famous. So this idea of like, what should we do first? And I'm like, you kind of got to do them all in tandem, right? Like the likelihood that you have high credibility without strong depth of ideas, those two things go together. The likelihood that you build a profile without being prolific, those go together. Well, how do you be prolific if you don't have strong depth of ideas that you're codifying to feed all the places where you're creating and sharing content? So they go together in tandem. So what I see a lot is people thinking, okay, this person has a fancy title. They're C-suite, they're an executive, they're a founder. That's our thought leader. We have declared it. The founder is the thought leader. And I'm just like, okay, again, what is their depth of ideas? Oh, well, they're running the company. Yes, that's very true. They're very good at their jobs, but have they codified those ideas? Have they put it down in a way that somebody else can learn from it, that it influences the conversation, that it drives things forward? Oh, well, no, they're very busy. Okay. Um, are they sharing? Like, are they on LinkedIn? Are they speaking at conferences? Are they writing articles? Well, no, as we've said, they are very busy. Oh, okay, so they have no thoughts and no followers, and they don't
and
share.
and they don't have time to talk with their customers on one
Yeah,
single channel. Like,
yeah, and they don't have time. How how are they the thought leader? Like they have no thoughts and like no one to lead. It's the basic definition, right? So that's something that I see a lot is where do people score on that each of those pillars, right? You work your way up. And obviously there's some tactics that I share frequently about how to do that, how to baseline yourself, what are the markers so you know you're making progress, which areas are the most dire. Again, if you have zero content to share, okay, probably step one is let's look at your depth of ideas at the conceptual, strategic, and tactical level to figure out what you're going to talk about. Then let's start creating those assets. So start to kind of get that prolific flywheel going. That will help you with your credibility and building that profile. Again, I see this all the time too, where everybody, social selling has become the holy grail. And so everyone says, okay,
mhm.
we're going to do social selling with thought leaders. And I'm like, okay, again, a social selling program is great. You do need that, but that is different than thought leadership. And so if you want to combine those two things in tandem, then your sales reps need to be creating something beyond just reframing the problem that you solve and the way you solve it in non-salesy language. And so I would almost say I struggle. People ask me all the time, they're like, should salespeople change their title on LinkedIn? And I'm like, well, on one hand, I used to say yes, like, dude, take the sales title off. Nobody is going to engage with you if you're in sales. But if you look at someone like Laura Erdem from Dream Data, for example, she's got a sales title. She talks about sales things. She's got a ton of followers. She generates great conversations. And I'm not really in her target audience, but if I were, they would be in my choice set. They would be in my consideration set because Laura does such a great job educating about the overall need for data attribution, tracking, changing your mindset, all of those things, right? If you follow the hashtag Sam Sells, she also does a great job. Samantha McKenna is her name. Same thing. I don't need sales training right now, but if I did, I would go to her because she talks holistically about some of the problems that are endemic to the industry, right? So you can definitely do it right, but you should not be conflating social selling with thought leadership.
Yeah, definitely. I can, I can relate to that. And what was in my mind, where you were talking about, should we use sales in the headline or no? Like, majority of people on LinkedIn are marketing and sales. So no matter if we want it or not, in most cases, to reach our ICP is over them or using them to kind of get us over there.
Yep.
And I always talk with a lot of SDRs, especially if they
Yep.
were trying to build their bit of personal brand, and to kind of get to this sales point the right way, by creating
Yep.
relationships with people and this kind of stuff. And they were like, what people are telling me is that they come to my profile when they see them SDR, so they have a hesitation,
Yep.
but then they check out the content and they see that I'm actually, talking about books that I'm reading. I'm talking about the
Yep.
company culture. I talk about different stuff. And then, like, I'm not just somebody who's gonna get them with a pitch right away.
Yep.
And that's when decide if they are gonna connect with me or no. And after that, are they gonna actually engage? And
Right.
even before that, if you as the SDR engage with them, then it's a little bit different. They know you by name. They don't care about the headline that much.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, the point of thought leadership is not just to drive short-term sales. And I think that's
Hmm.
the other problem is that people use, when you ask them what they mean by thought leadership, it's usually some higher marker of quality. They're basically saying, oh, thought leadership quality content is high quality content. No, you should have high quality content in everything. Your sales decks, your pricing pages, your landing pages, your webinars, all of that should be high quality. People should be able to have high quality conversations in the buying process. So
Yeah.
it's when you're starting to divorce quality, when you think that quality is something different, that's where we get into trouble. And so it's, there's a lot of ways to exchange value when you're thinking in that long-term mindset and that relationship mindset. Is it strategic partners? Is it brand champions? Is it attracting talent? And so there's a lot of different ways where you can use that thought leadership content. Again, if you think about from a culture or ways of working perspective, one of the things that we do at Atlassian from a thought leadership perspective is trying to drive this idea that you need to have open communication, open collaboration, and an open tool chain to be able to unleash the potential of every team, right? It's a lofty thing. And that sounds kind of abstract and hoity-toity, like, oh, yes, we're unleashing the potential. What does that actually look like? Well, we have our team playbook that gives tactical examples and exercises and templates for people to create project posters. It's got decision-making frameworks, retrospective templates, a thing called My User Manual to get teams on the same page about how they work. And so whether you buy our products or not, we want you to understand that having that open communication, that open mindset helps you drive work forward. Well, great, that's fine. Now you've got this lofty vision. How are you actually selling anything with that? Well, that translates into our tools. And so if you fundamentally agree that you need to have that open communication and that open collaboration, how the heck do you facilitate that? Well, here's how we've built our tools to integrate both, within other tools in Atlassian and with our partners so that you can see that. And we have a free tier. So if you go to that playbook, if you just want to do this with sticky notes and a pen or a pad of paper, you can do that, or a whiteboard. If you're doing it remotely, hey, maybe sign up for Trello for free with your team and you can run this retrospective in Trello. You don't have to buy Trello. That's totally fine. Sign up or don't. Run it on a whiteboard, run it in our tools, but here's some ways for you to do that. And so when you look at it all the way through, you start to see The thought leadership is around the practices and the ways of working in the future of work. The strategy, kind of strategic level of that piece is here's some exercises and processes that you can use. And then tactically, you can do it with sticky notes or you can do it with Trello. And that gives us a nice way for people to come directly into our products united to this thought leadership position. So it's all connected. By the same token, if you're looking for your next role and you start to see, wow, Atlassian really cares about how teamwork happens, not just are we productive, not just our outputs, but what is the well-being of our team? How are we communicating? How do people feel when they're working together in our teams? Man, I want to work for a company like that. And so that's how you start to see, that's where that thought leadership comes in. We're playing the long game to educate on practices, whether you use our products, whether you're looking to partner with us. We also include partnership templates from Miro and Mural, for example. So again, you don't even have to use our tools. If you need another tool, here you go. Here's Miro and here's Mural. Or I'm looking for a role in a team that thinks this way and has the same values as me. Oh, look, Atlassian does this based on this piece of content.
Love it. Thanks for explaining it all, and I like that way, because usually when we talk about that leadership, it's only like new way of looking at things. But how do we get there? What are some practices that we need to do to get there? And a lot comes down to that old saying, you need to share, like share to the point where you share everything, no matter if they choose somebody else, but you give them everything, you teach them how to do it. If they don't want to choose you, okay, you live with that. But in most cases, if you teach them how to do that, they will come to you. And that's how the biggest people that are actually known for thought leadership, for content and strategies, people that are changing the way industries go, that's how they do it. And this morning I was you reminded me of this morning I was listening to the episode of Christopher Lochhead's podcast. Like I think Roger Martin, was the guest, and they were thinking of new way of looking at strategy and strategic management and all those kind of stuff. And they're like, people who are forward thinkers, thought leaders, they are actually pissed because they see things from the future, and they're pissed because things are not changed, and that causes for them to do things, to share the way they would go there, to take everybody on that journey, because it's not like I see the way things are now, but I see the way things can be in the future, and what the strategy becomes, what do I need to do to actually create that reality in the future.
Yeah. Well, and it is that balance again, when you think about from a depth of ideas perspective, saying it in a way that other people, maybe you're only running 2 or 3 steps ahead of them by the time they reach your content. If you cast this vision that's 20 steps ahead or 5 years away, it's really hard for people to get on board with that. And so thinking about how do you make that incremental progress? How do you have a framework or a process or an idea that can resonate as like, man, that's super smart. I want to do that. But it's not 5 years away. It's I can take a step today. Okay, how do I do that? And so again, when we think about those content depths, maybe your conceptual level, why of the idea, framing up the problem space is 5, 10 years away, but you can do some tactical things today to start making those steps, right? Like, again, if we think about it from a marketing perspective, the conversation about, oh, MQLs are dead. Okay, what we're really talking about is that we need to get away from only relying on attribution software to tell us whether someone is ready and willing and able to buy. That's a big leap. And so the quippy way to say it is, MQLs are dead, right? But what are some of the small steps we can take today to make that vision reality, where you've got this audience-centric buyers process or selling process? So balancing that so that you're not running so far ahead that people think you're crazy, but not running so far behind that you're just shouting into the same echo chamber that everybody else is in. I think that sweet spot of casting a vision, but also showing how you get there with those incremental steps, with those frameworks, with those processes, that's how you really win from a thought leadership perspective. It's not just casting a contrarian vision or saying big, grand plans that may happen, look at this grand future. You got to bring people along, and you got to do it in a way that they can take it and make it their own and add to that conversation and drive it forward.
Yeah, because in most cases, when you look at the things, you need to show people on their own example where they're making a mistake. And
Right.
that needs to go bit by bit.
Yeah.
What not many people are talking on LinkedIn, especially people, like you and me from marketing that are talking about like MQLs, that demand generation is what we should do, those kind of things.
Yeah.
They don't tell you that you need to get inside the company and work at least a couple of months with a company to actually show them on their own example what are the costs, that some
Yep.
things are not well to do that way, what are the reasons, because you can go to them and you can tell them like, okay, so how many leads do you get? Like
Right.
6,000 leads. Perfect. How many scheduled calls do you get? Like 20. And how many of them you close? Like six.
Yep.
And they wouldn't get it because it steals like
Right.
6,000 leads. But we next month we may close more,
Right.
because they won't get it unless you go over there and show them like the lead is not just cost per lead. It's actually
Yeah.
somebody who is writing content. You need to employ those people or hire them. Somebody who is running the ads budget, people in sales, attribution
Yeah.
software, like lots of stuff get into that, like, I don't know, 5 to 200 dollars per lead. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
much higher.
Oh yeah. Well, especially when you actually run it down and see the closed won, closed lost, or you run it down and you look at how that plays within the entire rest of the strategy. And again, I think there's an element of, what's the value of thought leadership? It's really hard to track in some cases because you don't see that speaking, you've been posting on LinkedIn. So a conference organizer reaches out to invite you to come speak. You get on that stage in front of 500 or 1,000 people. Somebody sees you, shares, goes and does a write up internally of, hey, I went to this conference and I saw this person. Then they go, and again, I'm giving a real example from Atlassian. Then they go and they start using the team playbook. And then they use our products to execute the plays in the team playbook, and it's free for up to 10 users. Well, then it starts to spread, and on that 11th user, it monetizes. Which thing in there was the linchpin in converting them?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of needed all of those touch points, right? And sometimes people stay at that free limit. Other times it turns them into they've been using it for years and they love us, and they see a job opening and they're like, I've been using this for years. We love this thing, had to apply, right? Like there's so many ways to get that value that it makes sense for us. And again, we do track a number of things and we do try to connect the dots. But at the end of the day, you can't fundamentally point to the one thing that finally converted someone in most cases. And so understanding again how people are thinking and buying, or thinking and applying, or thinking and building. In our case, we have an ecosystem so people can build on our products. All of those things have to go into your considerations for how you're building the strategy and the pieces of content. It can't just be, again, cost per lead. Like, yes, it's great for that to be low, but if you factor in that conversion rate at the end, those costs have to come back up. It's not just, the number of impressions divided by the number of clicks, and therefore now you've gotten your cost per click or something like that. It's like, okay, but what's the quality of those clicks?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, look, lots of things are even changing. If we go even into the tactics, lots of
Yeah.
things are changing, and sometimes things that were working like 2 months ago aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can talk about the tactics that are here now for like 20 years, and people are
Right.
still thinking that they work. Well, some of them does, but
Yeah.
most of them aren't working anymore because the way people buy has changed, especially in B2B environment, like
Yeah.
with technology, with pandemic, everything, like lots of things has changed.
Yeah.
And companies need to acknowledge that, and they would if they talk more with their customers.
Yeah. For sure. For
Uh,
sure.
But tell me one thing I want to hear your thoughts on. Like, so we talk about thought leadership, and we obviously met on LinkedIn. So where do you think LinkedIn is going when it comes to the content, when it comes to what people are sharing and how it is developing? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Man, it's so interesting. I think how I would have answered that 6 months ago is actually probably different. Speaking of how quickly
Yeah.
things change, I think that it is an interesting time. LinkedIn is wanting to they are heavily leaning in from a strategy standpoint on content creators, but they're doing some things that don't support that, right? Like I saw Jay Akunzo actually posted something where he was like, LinkedIn, how are you going to say that you support creators if you penalize the reach if I post a link to something that I've created in the post, right? So it's an interesting thing. I think that that optimization for relationships is still in flux, and the realization that those relationships are long-term relationships. So I think there's still this mindset in a lot of corners that it's a distribution channel, it's a place for me to have conversations about myself or my work or my brand, versus a place for relationships and a place to exchange multiple types of value. So the way I think about it is, if you think about the social media spectrum, on one end you have basically a one-way broadcast. It's communicating. I have something to say, and you are here to consume that information. That's what it used to
Hmm.
be. I think a lot of companies and people are starting to realize, okay, that's one-way broadcast. Simply blasting information is not the way to do it. I think a lot of us are in this conversation mindset where we're going to go back and forth, but it's still a brand led or a person led conversation. I've got things to say, but you know, I'll let you talk too. Sometimes you can talk, but really you still need to be talking about me, right? It's that conversation. But you look at the measurements and it's about app mentions. How many app mentions do we have on the brand? Or what's the reach of my personal hashtag? So we'll talk, but really I'm still in charge. Where we need to go, and where I think we're starting to see that shift happen, is going into community. And so that's where you start to
Hmm.
say, what are the topics that we all care about? How do I host a party where other people can have these conversations? If you think about that, the party host is not like butting into every single conversation. The best parties are the ones where someone has brought together a really cool group of compatible people who can exchange ideas, and then they float from conversation to conversation. They facilitate an environment where those conversations happen. And so I think that's where we're going on LinkedIn. Again, I see it, right? Where you and I'm not selling anything to you. I'm talking about Atlassian, but nowhere in here am I saying the only way to solve this problem is to buy a product that I sell. Not doing that. You, again, same thing. You're a marketing agency. Atlassian uses marketing agencies. I'm not currently in the market to hire a new marketing agency, but you and I are having this excellent exchange of information. I love following your content on LinkedIn. You start really quality conversations. It's worth it for us to be connected, even though we're not immediately trying to sell each other something. And how awkward would it be if, like, you're trying to pitch me and I'm trying to pitch you, and I'm like,
Yeah.
haha, well, I get the upper hand to sell you something first. Like, that's just real weird. Why would we do that versus having this connection that we have? And if I know somebody who's looking for a marketing agency, great. Hey, Funky Marketing, Nemanja, he's great. Let me intro you. If you hear of somebody that wants to talk thought leadership or content strategy on their podcast, oh, you should check out Ashley. Here's what she's working on, right? Like, there's so many different ways for us to exchange value besides trying. So again, it feels so weird to me to think of coming into your LinkedIn threads and being like, buy Atlassian. Like, that's just a weird thought, right? So that's where I think we're going, with LinkedIn in particular, is really trying to move into that community. I think a lot of people are still stuck in conversation and thinly veiled sales pitches of like, how many comments do I have to leave before we have a
Yeah.
relationship and I can sell you something, right? It's like, no, you don't behave that way in real life. How do you have that equal exchange of value mindset holistically, not just that short-term sale once I've commented apparently enough times.
Yeah. Listen, I'm gonna do something I didn't do that for. I don't think I ever done it here, except if somebody has some kind of presentation. I'm gonna share a screen for a minute. Just I hope that people can see it. Just so I want to show them, like if you want to know where LinkedIn is going, how I think about it, you just go to LinkedIn, you type LinkedIn mission, and you
Yeah.
get the mission of LinkedIn in simple: connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. And it tells you all. If it doesn't tell you all, you got in and you see the vision: create economic opportunity for every member of the global workplace. And the mission: connect the world's professional to make them more productive and successful. So basically, that tells you everything you need to do. You need to
Yeah.
connect people and give them a chance to to get to the next level by giving them the resources, even if it's you that's educating them or you are enabling them to go to educate themselves. And that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Tom has a comment. Say this is the exact discussion is our company about developing leadership. It is difficult as most are motivated and measured by speed, attendees, conversion, revenue generation, etc. The reality is we need a longer term strategy and patience. It's farming, nurturing, not just hunting. And hit rate, love, comment, sales, and marketing needs to communicate and collaborate to help you market and suspects to learning and get engaged. Yeah, I guess Tom is just confirming what we are talking about
Yeah.
here. Yeah, it's. I mean, there are so many discussions around these topics happening at the moment. So, and I guess like
Yeah.
if you and I talk in like 3 months, we'll probably have a totally different view of the things.
Yeah.
But one thing is like every social media platform is the platform of its own,
Yeah.
and it's developing, changing. And it's different. Uh, Saying like, oh, when you share a post of somebody else's, like it's your reach. Okay, of course, that's what you do on Facebook. You don't do that on
Right.
LinkedIn. You
Exactly.
share it in a different way because it
Right.
sparks engagement. And when you just share it, there's no engagement. But when you
Right.
you know copy the post or you screenshot it and tag the person, then you invite them into the conversations. And
Yeah.
just a single example of how things are working differently.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I think the quirks of each platform, again, that's why from a strategy standpoint, you have to look at what is the goal for each of these things. And on LinkedIn, it's specifically to connect, to build those relationships. For Facebook or Twitter, I mean, again, I would say even Twitter has changed. It also went through that same evolution of just being a broadcast platform. And I think it still rewards kind of that broadcasting more than LinkedIn does. But threads, comments, going back and forth in gifs, like that relationship aspect of it and that human aspect of it is also on the rise in Twitter as well.
Yeah, they have that part being developed as well. I mean, it's still news first platforms where news are traveling fast, and the
Yeah.
platform where when you go to give a feedback to a company, usually not the good one. But like if you look at from the total leadership perspective, like leaders of the new businesses are over there sharing their thoughts, their processes, connecting with each other. And and one thing that's kind of stuck with me is like not many people from this part of the world are actually doing that on Twitter. Not many
Yeah.
people, it's mostly US,
Yep.
all kind of from other parts of the world, but like the majority are people from the US because I
Yeah.
think they're more open and more willing to share things. And other we need to just adjust to that and come to that
Yeah.
level of honesty and being direct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look where the discussion took us.
Here, there, and everywhere. Again, we have traversed the playground. We went up, down, sideways. We entered, we
Yeah,
exited, we've come back. Works out great.
definitely. Anything on your mind that we didn't talk about and you wanted to say?
I don't think so. We covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So one thing that you can tell us is where can people find more information about you, connect with you, and start a relationship with you on whatever channel it is.
I mean, LinkedIn. I know you're shocked at that answer, but yeah, I'm quite prolific on LinkedIn. I accept requests and messages, and I do engage in the comments. I'm on Twitter at Ashley Faus a little bit. Well, not. I mean, again, I'm there. You can come hang out with me on Twitter, but yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me.
Nice. Love that. Guys, now is the time when I'm telling you for the second time in this episode to go back to the beginning and listen or watch, no matter if you are watching on YouTube or listening to your favorite audio platforms, like go back to the beginning and listen to it all from the start. Stop wherever you need time to stop, to think about things, maybe go ahead and do your research, try things, because that's how you learn from one podcast episode, not just by, I'm gonna listen to it once and that's it. You go back to the specific parts and and you start applying those things, and then if you need help, you reach out to Ashley, you reach out to me, and if we can help, we're always there to do that. Ashley, thanks again for taking the time to be on the Funky Marketing Show. I'm sure we'll repeat that in a couple of months, because something tells me that in autumn we're going to have a totally different things going on over there,
Oh
because
yeah,
lots of things are changing in the world.
yeah.
And guys, for you, a message for the end is always keep it funky. Don't consider life that much serious. Bye bye.
Bye.